Okay, my name is Kristina Massey, and I am going to be talking today about some research that I've carried out in this field. Before I start or say anything, I wanted to just ask anybody who's at home, perhaps listening, if there are young people around or people that perhaps would not want to hear this sort of content, or it's not appropriate for them to do so, if you could either put in headphones or put me on mute and listen to this another time, because much of what I will be talking about is not appropriate for young people to hear. And similarly, if this is not something that you're comfortable with hearing, because I will be talking about certain acts, then please, vacate yourself from this session. So that said, I will carry on now. As I say, my name is Kristina Massey, and I was part of the team who carried out the consortium investigation into the effect of pornography on children and young people. And we were led by Miranda Horvat, who's now was at Middlesex, now at Suffolk. And we looked at basically the idea around, are young people viewing pornography? And if so, is that a problem? Do we need to worry about this? And that quote, basically, porn is everywhere, came from one of the young people in our focus group when we spoke to young people about their relationship with pornography. And it was a bit concerning that they said basically it's everywhere, because one of the things we were interested in is are young people watching pornography at all? This piece of work that we did came from a larger piece of work, which was looking at child sexual exploitation in gangs and groups. And during that inquiry, during that much wider piece of work, there were repeated concerns from professionals about pornography impacting on children and young people's views and understanding and practices, and that they were hearing very concerning things from young people themselves about pornography. There were also concerning reports in police case files of young males who had perpetrated sexual offences, citing pornography as the reason for that. So saying things like, it felt like I was in a porn movie, or that they were acting out something they'd seen in a porn film, and that part of their motivation, inspiration for the sexual violence came from pornography. So obviously the government was very concerned about this and commissioned us to carry out this investigation. So we found 41,000 journal articles, grey and white literature worldwide, that looked at young people and pornography. We whittled this down to nearly 300 that we finally read in full and analysed. And we carried out a rapid evidence assessment. And really, I was unprepared for the findings. We found that young people are absolutely watching pornography from very, very young ages. I mean, we found studies that showed 6-year-olds viewing pornography, a study carried out in this country by Bobber and Livingstone, finding that in the 9 to 19-year-old age group, over half had watched pornography that week, the week they were interviewed. And there were some very concerning themes that came out of these studies. So there was a lot of talk around body image insecurities, that people were measuring themselves up to the people in pornography, viewing pornography as the norm, and therefore seeing themselves as not normal, and not understanding that those people are, physically and sometimes digitally enhanced, and that they're not normal people. But we also found, from a forensic kind of perspective, some very concerning findings around sexual expectations, sexual behaviour and sexual norms shifting in line with pornography. So, for example, pornography often will not show condom use, and young people therefore not viewing condom use as a normal part of sex. or that certain sex acts that were fairly rare 20, 30 years ago before the advent of the internet becoming far, far more common. And one of the most concerning things being a blatant lack of concern for consent, that young people don't even necessarily understand what consent is, so that thinking, for example, you can convince someone to have sex with you. Well, if you've convinced them, then that was actually a coercive sex act. So some very concerning things that young people, ideas that young people are holding about what is sex coming from pornography. The findings from the studies were kind of difficult because we had to use international literature, and obviously there's cultural differences, there's religious differences, there's even differences to access to the internet in different countries. So it was kind of difficult to make many strong assertions from what we read, but there were some things absolutely that we can be confident about. One being that young people are definitely viewing pornography and are being exposed to pornography. So they're either accessing it voluntarily, seeking it out, or they're being exposed to it by other people. That this exposure increases with age, which kind of stands to reason. Exposure to everything increases with age, but we are seeing pornography viewing in primary school age children, absolutely. We found a huge gender difference in attitudes to pornography and access to and exposure to pornography. So females report to much more have been exposed to pornography than have sought it out themselves. We also found that with younger children, it seems as if perhaps they're being shown pornography more than they're looking for it directly, or that they've Googled something fairly innocuous, like, I don't know who is the recent pop star, but let's just say Britney Spears, and then you actually get, you click on a link that says photos of Britney Spears, and they're not Britney Spears, they're pornographic images. So young people are being exposed to pornography even without wanting to seek it out. So I think that one very, very important thing that came out of this is that most adults like to think that their child, their primary school age child, is not viewing these kinds of images, but actually chances are they are. So our recommendations after carrying out this study were that the government needed to embark on an evidence-based awareness raising campaign, because what we know is parents and teachers don't think that children are viewing pornography, but they are. And so grown-ups, adults in children's lives need to know that this is going on, so that they can counteract some of the very, very negative messages that these young people are receiving from this pornography. We also stated that there needed to be high quality relationship and sex education, and it's very important that it's relationship and sex. So we're not talking about telling young people about pregnancy and condom use. That's important, but that's only a tiny part of the picture. We need to be talking to our young people about consent, about reciprocity, about coercion, you know, that it is rape if somebody is asleep and you have sex with them, because many, many young people don't appreciate that. We need to be having these kinds of conversations, because at the moment, pornography is educating our young people. We also, like I said, have found this shift in sexual behaviours, and there is a study which again was in that information that I sent out, the NatSal study, and it looks at sexual behaviours every 10 years and finds shifts, and it's a very widespread study. It looks at a lot of people, sort of 10,000 on average all over the country, and asks about their sexual behaviour. Unfortunately for me, they don't break down their participant groups. So they have people from 16 to 44. I don't know what happens when you're 45, if perhaps you don't have sex anymore, but you're not included in this study. They don't break it down in the way I would like. So for my purposes, it would be helpful if they had the sort of 16 to 20 age group or something, but they don't necessarily do that. But What we found, or what we can see from NatSal, is that NatSal 1 was, I think, the year 2000, then we have 2010, and 2020, I think, or maybe it was 1990, 2000. Anyway, every 10 years. And what we're seeing is this increase in anal sex being a part of people's sexual repertoire. And the reason that I was particularly interested in this is that anal sex is a very, very common, if not the most common, form of sex in pornography. And I would suggest that this rise in anal sex being part of people's sexual behaviour coming from viewing pornography, that pornography is saying this is the way that sex is done, this is what should be done. And certainly NatSal 3, the most recent study, we're finding 18.5% of young people, and in that year they did break it down to the 16 to 24 age group, were having or had anal sex. Back in NatSal 1, we're finding only 7% of people reporting that they had had anal sex. So we are seeing these shifts in sexual behaviour. One thing that is often said about sex education is, you know, if you tell young people about it, they'll have sex. We know categorically young people are having sex. We can see that from NatSal. And in NatSal, nearly 20% of people report to have had more than 10 partners. So we're finding that, you know, young people are having sex, young people are having varied sex with varied partners, and young people are viewing pornography, and that is irrefutable. All over the world, we have, you know, there are studies that show that young people are viewing pornography, and Livingston and Boburn, this was a while ago now, so I'm sure it will have increased as, you know, smartphones have become commonplace and young people have tablets, that 58% of the 9 to 19-year-olds they spoke to had seen pornography. And I think very significantly, 16% of their parents thought that they had. So adults don't really understand what's going on in their young people's lives much of the time, and they don't understand that pornography is educating their young people about what sex looks like. Marsden and Lewis in 2015 carried out an interview study looking at hetero anal sex, and Lewis is one of the team who works on NatSal. And I think from the dramatic increase in anal sex, she carried out this study to look at what's going on there. So why is it increasing? What's going on with this particular form of sex that was traditionally or historically fairly unusual? And she found that the young people in her study were citing pornography as the reason for wanting to have anal sex. She does state that she believes the relationship is more complicated than that, but that is where young people are saying that they're getting this idea from and why they're wanting to do it. Of course, you know, there is also peer pressure. So if one person's seen a film with anal sex and then maybe makes fun of his mates because he's not doing this, and, you know, and so on. But it does seem to come from pornography. The young people in this study acknowledged that they knew that anal sex was painful for their partners. They knew it was risky, and they often had to coerce their partners to engage in it, that the females that they were having sex with didn't want to do it. But they had to kind of talk them around to it. So what we have here is a shift in sexual behaviour, but also a shift in sexual attitudes that includes coercing people to engage in sex they don't want to have. Quite horrifically in this study, the bit that I think really stuck with me was that for these young people, consent was not seen to be important. So the young people, or some of the young people in this study, said in their interview that if she says no, she doesn't want to do it, you just do it anyway and say it slipped in. And so what we have there is anal rape, but young people not appreciating that this is anal rape. And I again attribute some of that to pornography, where a very common theme in porn films is the woman saying no, I don't want to. He does it anyway, and then she enjoys it in the end. And I think that this sends a message around how women can be coerced into sex, that if they say no, they mean yes, really, and that consent is not an important part of pornography, except in BDSM, where there is a formal contracting at the beginning of a film, whereas in mainstream heterosexual pornography, what you're seeing is male dominance of women. This is another study carried out with young people, so 18-year-olds to, I think, mid-20s. It was carried out in Germany. But what this study found was that there is a direct correlation between viewing of pornography and violent and degrading sex acts to women. Of course, we can't prove causality, so it's possible that people that watch pornography that is in line with their sexual interests anyway. It's a bit like, I don't like golf, so I don't play golf, and I don't read magazines about golf, and I don't watch golf on TV. We watch what we're interested in. So it is possible that these men were interested in these kind of violent sex acts anyway, and that's why they watch pornography. But because pornography viewing is so widespread, I think that actually there is something more complicated going on than just people watching films that they're interested in. Sex acts like choking are becoming very common and are becoming sort of a normal part of sexual repertoire for young people. So these two studies, Marston and Lewis and Wright, show us that pornography is informing sexual practices of young people, and it is linked to sexual coercion and domination of women and subordination of women, and it is associated with males being dominant and violent in sex acts. And when we ask young people why that is, they're telling us it's from what they've seen in pornography, although, you know, we cannot fully establish causality. And of course, you know, sexual behavior is more complex, and there's more going on than just that. But why do young people watch pornography? And I carried out a study, which I haven't yet published, where I interviewed 9 young males about their pornography use. And what I was told quite clearly by all of them really was that they either had no sex education in schools, certainly the ones who went to religious schools, and I think one who went to an independent school, but also that the sex education they received did not relate to them. It wasn't what they wanted to know. They didn't want to know how to put a condom on a banana. They wanted to know actual sex acts. And I did, after I did this study, I sort of did a little bit of investigating, because they said things like, you can't find out what something actually is. So if you hear someone say blowjob, you don't know what that is. How do you find out what that is? And I actually did an internet search, and if you search blowjob, you find literally millions of porn sites, and I also found a description by Brooke, but I had to spend quite a long time looking for it. So we're not telling young people the information they want. They want to know, how do you do this? Where do you put that? What does this mean? If my partner says she wants to do this or that, what is it? We're not telling them that. We're not giving them the information they need, and so they are going somewhere else to find that internet information. They're going where we all go to find out anything. If I want to know if the cinema's open, I go on the internet. They're going on the internet, but unfortunately, largely they're getting unhelpful information that's actually damaging to them and to their partners. And that's why I was really interested in this game and into None in 3, because I think the role that game could play for young people is an unembarrassed approach to educating young people in a way they can relate to, because I think almost all young people have seen video games. You know, it's something other than, you know, maybe a teacher who doesn't really want to be doing the sex education, who's been told she has to do it or he has to do it, embarrassingly talking to some teenagers who also feel uncomfortable about it. And it takes all of that away, and it gives young people the opportunity to explore something in a way they can relate to, that's young person centric, and that is approachable, and that is unembarrassed. And I think that's really important. That's what we need. We need to be communicating the information that our young people want to know in a way that they can receive it so that they don't have to resort to going onto the internet and watching videos of women being degraded and then thinking that that is what sex is, or worse still, women being coerced or raped. So that is the end of my presentation. The report that we did for the Children's Commissioner is available online to anybody who is interested, and my email address is there if anybody, yes, is interested further. But thank you very much.